This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 352 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today we're talking about mindful travel in all its guises. Firstly, let me pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast today. So I think there are many ways to define mindful travel, but for me, the most important one is the idea of being present in the moment while you're on your trip. Really present. I have to say, I find this relatively easy when I travel compared to quote-unquote normal life. I'm mostly able to forget about like work issues or any particular stresses back home. So I think that's a good start. But if I think about times when I have had like a really mindful trip where I've really been present, I think there's kind of two ways that this happens. Either on trips with lots of slow travel of some kind. So hiking trips, where we're walking most of the day, for days at a time. Or also, for example, long train trips, the Trans-Siberian across Russia springs to mind. Lots of time. And similarly, the other kind, I think, is on solo travel. And I think that's because, when you're traveling on your own, you tend to get a lot more time alone with your thoughts. And that can also make you more mindful. So in today's episode, the stories are kind of a mix of all of these ideas. I'm going to chat first with Chelsea Gruber, and she has had some kind of very intentional experiences of mindful travel on solo trips in particular. Next, I'll chat with Christine Newell about some ways that she found she could be an especially mindful traveller in places like Japan. And my last guest, Louis Hall, has a particular mode of travel that enables him to be mindful, but I'm going to let you wait until Louis comes on to find out what that mode of travel is. So first up, I'm chatting with Chelsea Gruber, who early on in her travelling career took herself very intentionally off on a mindful experience.
So my first solo trip back when I was a baby 25-year-old, I did a yoga retreat to Costa Rica. And that's kind of where that started. I think in a similar sense to the physical trips, I think the mindful trips are just as important. And a lot of times I'll pair them on. Like after Kilimanjaro, I went to Zanzibar for a few days, didn't make any plans, just had plans to just meditate on the beach, do some yoga, do some journaling. And then I did another like similar spiritual trip in Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand. It was really just, I think the Buddhist religion is so fascinating. And so I'll have trips like that too, where I just want to explore other religions and meditate with different sorts of people and different cultures. And you always just leave just feeling like a completely different person. So yeah, I like to tag these more mindful trips on the physical excursion afterwards. Because it's like, okay, I did the physical labor. Now it's time to tackle the mental labor and see what's going on in my head right now. So it's sitting with yourself is something that I don't think that we do enough. Sitting with your own thoughts, sitting and with no distractions, turning off technology. It's not as easy as it sounds.
It already sounds very hard, actually.
It is very hard. And so that's why I like to do it in like another beautiful country, because I'm like, oh, if I could, I'd much rather do it on the beaches of Zanzibar than do it in my living room. So
yes.
There is something big on the mindful trips about, self-discovery and growth and just really tackling like what's going on in your mind. It just feels like, every year you just, you've something different mental that you're tackling or healing or something different that you're working on. And so that's what, I always go into these trips with an intention, like, what part of my inner child do I want to heal on this? Or what part what mental aspect do I want to work on growing? Or what in my life isn't working out and why is that? And so it's just a lot of self-reflection, and it's if you do it in a beautiful country, like it just, it makes the whole thing a lot less painful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're away from the distractions of home life as well.
Exactly. And you're by yourself. So, and
Mm.
that's another, I think, element that makes such a big difference, because I do think that when I'm by myself abroad, I am the most authentic version of myself because I don't have a mask on. There's no one that I'm trying to impress. There's no one that I'm trying to entertain. I don't have any friends there that I'm like, okay, well, I got to, make sure that they're having fun and this and that, or I don't have family there. Like it's just me, and it's, not, probably won't see any of these people ever again. And so being able to be my most authentic self is such a huge thing, and doing this kind of like mental self-discovery work makes such a big difference not to have anyone else from home there.
Yeah. No one who knows anything about you or how you've behaved in the past or how you normally
Exactly.
act or anything at all. Just
No past judgments, like just it's like just a fresh slate. Oh, and it's such a wonderful experience.
Interesting. I've never done anything as intentional as that, but I know that exact feeling of when you are away from home, how you can just be 100% you because nobody else knows or cares. That is a powerful part of travel.
And I think that's kind of how you learn to fall in love with yourself more. Like when you spend that much time alone, especially abroad, and you kind of really see, oh, this is, I actually don't like this thing that I thought I liked. I actually do like this, that, a little bit more. You kind of discover things about yourself that you didn't know back home. And I think each time I come back from one of these trips, like I know myself better, and then I love myself more because of it, because I understand myself a little bit better.
Yeah, that was my next question is, so when you're away and you can, feel you have, maybe you have like a real breakthrough or an epiphany or some, really new intentions or plans, and then you get home and back into normal life. Is it hard to carry that through? Does normal life interrupt this?
Then I just plan my next trip. No.
I mean, that's a great idea.
I'm always planning a trip. Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely. I think that's you get home, you're back with the same people, you're back at work. It's hard to carry some of that stuff sometimes. But I think the more you do it, the more it strengthens that, like, those muscles that you're using and that healing that you're doing. It's not like you can just go on. I don't think that you can just go on one trip and heal everything and your life will be changed forever. Yeah. I think consistency is kind of the thing. So even if you do a little weekend trip, a little staycation every now and then, and just go be mindful, go meditate somewhere, the more that you're able to spend some time alone, I think that it's easier to bring that stuff back to your everyday life. Those revelations and that self-discovery.
I've read some people's memoirs and stuff where they do these kind of like, go somewhere on a yoga retreat or meditation retreat, and then they have like a lot of breakthroughs. They're actually like really upset and they're all alone. And I'm always thinking, oh, this sounds so hard. Like, I would want my friends or family to be helping me there. Have you ever had that kind of experience where you're like, whoa, I'm here all alone and this is now really hard?
Oh, yeah. My first solo trip, I had a complete breakdown and I like almost booked a flight home. It was awful. I was like, this is the worst, dumbest thing I've ever done. I got into Costa Rica and got to my hotel, and it was like 4 a.m. It was a weird time because, I was 25. I didn't have any money, and so I had to buy
the cheapest fare.
It was a Spirit Airlines. Got there, I just started sobbing. I felt so alone. I wasn't even physically, like geographically, I wasn't that far away from everybody. I felt so alone, so like scared, and so I was already looking at flights to go back home the next day. Wow. And the very first day, I had booked this like whitewater rafting trip down the Pacuare River. And it started at like, they were going to pick me up in a couple hours after I landed. So I think they were picking me up at 7 a.m. I was like, I'll just go on this whitewater rafting trip and then I'll book my flight home tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I get on the whitewater rafting trip, like still like, I don't want to be here. Like I'm horrified, I'm not comfortable. I don't know anybody. I miss my family. I miss my friends. And I got into this group. And immediately I met 2 other female solo travelers. And I started talking to them. We ended up just clicking right away. We had such a great time. We talked the whole time. Mm-hmm. It turns out that they were staying close to where I was staying. And it really was just one of those moments that like if I hadn't met them, I think that my life would have been completely different. I would have
Yep.
booked a flight home the next day. I never would have tried solo travel again. It was just a very serendipitous event for me to meet these two women. And they were just so they were so motivational. They're like, you know what, you're fine. And they were giving me like tips and tricks. And so we ended up just, we were all solo traveling, but we ended up just spending our trips together. We would go out to eat, and we went salsa dancing one night. And it really was amazing. So yeah, that made all the difference in the world.
I especially like Chelsea's ideas about being kind of the real you when you travel. I think that is absolutely the case with me too. Interesting stuff. Now, my next guest is Christine Newell, and she talks to me about looking at the details when you travel in a mindful way.
I think the most memorable moments when I've been traveling have been the smaller things, the memories in the details, not in the big tourist attractions. While they're fun and spectacular, I think that for me, it's just about taking my time and, being mindful of what's around me, who is around me, where I am, and just not rushing from place to place. And I know that mindful travel also branches into, looking after the environment and animal welfare and all of that kind of thing, which is so important as well. But for me, it's also very much about just creating those really special memories, leaving myself open to connection. I think when we have a list of places that we want to go, and, it's so tempting to fall into that. I went to Japan for the first time a few years ago on my way to South Korea, and I'd never been to Japan. So kind of the opposite experience to what you've had.
Yeah.
I was living in South Korea, but I never quite made it over to Japan. So it was on my list. And, before you leave, you have everyone telling you all of the places, all of the palaces, all of the shrines that you should go and go to. And, I started to fall into that trap a little bit, which isn't really me. It's not really who I am. And then, I'd been there a few days and I just grew really tired of it. Like it was fantastic and, great to have those photos and see those really important places. But there was this one day in particular where I just thought, you know what, I'm done. I'm not the type of person that likes to rush from one thing to the other anyway, even in my everyday life. I don't like doing multiple things in one day. I really like to be present and just focus on the one thing. So I just threw all the plans out the window, and I was staying in a little Airbnb in Kyoto in a really quiet neighborhood. The neighborhood was so beautiful, but I hadn't given myself the chance to explore it because I was busy chasing all of those other things. So, like I said, I threw my plans out the window and I started my day by going to a tea house. And I just sat there eating rice cakes, and they were so lovely. They came in and brought over this tray of tea, and then they set this little timer to make sure that the tea was brewed
perfectly. Oh.
And it started raining outside. And I was sitting there and I've got this beautiful cup of tea in front of me, these lovely rice cakes in this really kind of rustic environment, and just listening to the rain. And, that's the first thing I remember
Exactly.
when I think about my trip.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was actually a really incredible day. I went to a noodle shop for lunch, and there was a little bit of a queue. So it was obviously very popular with the locals. And while I was waiting in line, a beautiful Japanese lady started talking to me. She spoke English very well. She loved chatting with foreigners, and she'd had foreign exchange students stay with her. So I think she was quite excited to chat with me and practice her English. And then she invited me to have lunch with her.
Oh.
We sat together and had this beautiful lunch. And then when her husband came to pick her up, they invited me to go to dinner at their house the next night.
No way.
It was incredible. And they were just so lovely. They were an older couple and, just so hospitable and so welcoming. So I went to their home in Kyoto, in this
Amazing.
traditional little neighborhood, and they just cooked me up a feast. The
I
most
bet.
amazing tempura and prawns and, everything that you would expect. And, we just sat there chatting. They gave me a tour of their home. They were very humble, but they really, wanted to share their life and their culture with me and also learn about my life in Australia. And, again, I wouldn't have had that experience if I'd been busy kind of checking things off my list.
Yeah,
So I think it's,
exactly.
for me, mindful travel is about caring for the environment that you're in, but it's also just about staying open to those really special, meaningful experiences that you often don't leave room for when you're, chasing all the big things. So
Yeah. Perfect example. You are a girl after my own heart. So that and as you said earlier, that's the stuff you remember when you look back on that trip. That's the stuff that stays close to your heart and the special
yeah,
experiences.
yeah, and it doesn't mean that going to see those, more popular tourist attractions is a bad thing. But I think, being careful and remembering that, you're in someone else's environment, someone else's home, and just, caring for everything around you, as well as giving yourself the space. Because I think, at the end of the day, it's the people that you meet and those really unexpected moments that pop up out of nowhere that stay with you. I've got some great photos of all of the popular places to visit in Japan, but like we said, that's not the first thing that actually springs to my mind. When I think about that trip, I remember that little quiet street in Kyoto. I remember the tea house. I remember the rain. I remember, the person who served the tea just wanting to make sure that it was perfect, that I didn't pour it before the timer went off.
Yes.
I remember the beautiful couple that I met and the beautiful home and their hospitality. So
I love that and completely agree that in my experience, Japan is a really good place to practice being more mindful because it is often a part of the culture there as well. Very lovely indeed. Now, my final guest today is Louis Hall, and we are actually talking about horses and riding horses on our travels. Louis had some first encounters with horses not until he was 18, so it led to some very mindful experiences, which he told me about.
When I first started getting itchy feet or wanting to travel, which was when I was around 18, and then I went to Mongolia. I saved up some money and then went to Mongolia with two friends to find this tribe called the Zatan tribe who live with reindeer. To get to them, though, we needed to buy some Mongolian ponies and ride to them. Now, before that, I didn't really have much understanding of horses other than they're kind of, well, in the UK, they're kind of for sport or recreation or, really not in the kind of the everyday life anymore. However, when I was there, it just transformed my preconceptions about what it is to be with another animal when you're traveling, because instead of having the responsibility on yourself and all the thoughts about you looking after yourself, they immediately are pushed aside, and you have to care for an animal, and it makes you go so much further. It allows you to interact with so many more people from different walks of life, and people are magnetized towards you because you're not just a person with your with your troubles in your backpack. You are with an animal, and you're suddenly far more connected to the world around you. A native animal, especially, far more connected to the world around you than just a foreigner. And for me, it gives me a lot of justification, I guess, or it makes me feel far more comfortable traveling with an animal because they are in a way borderless, and they have no time for race or sex or religion or borders or anything that might cause an initial reaction from a foreigner to a local. They are universal, and therefore we can all relate to them. And especially for me, horses, because horses, 5,500 years are mankind's oldest, most loyal companion. The human history is absolutely interwoven with the history and evolution of horses, and we wouldn't be here today, obviously, without them. So I discovered this kind of companionship, I guess, with an animal in Mongolia, and then that's been kind of the basis for most of the trips or journeys I've done or written about since. After that, I went down the UK with a Highland pony called Elanda in memory of a friend of mine who passed away, and that was extraordinary. I thought it was going to be like a lonely trip on my own with fighting midgies, which are, for those who don't know, are horrible little mosquito type things that that cover your face in Scotland, and then bogs and sinkholes and angry farmers and motorways, whatever. But actually, it was the most incredible journey that just everyone from all walks of life would come and say hi to the pony first, and then to me, and it was, out of the 57 nights, we paid for accommodation for 5, I think it was. And it was just extraordinary. But that was all down to the pony. That was all down to this animal that brought people together. And then, since then, my first book, In Green, is just about that. It's about this wonderful kind of river-like connection that horses make, and how people can relate to them, even if they don't know the horses themselves, have had experience. They're just drawn to them because they are these animals of peace, and they represent our history. They represent our where we've come from. But they also, being animals without a sense of past and future, not troubled by the issues that we humans have, especially in the modern age of fast moving and kind of everything that seems to happen at our fingertips. They force me in particular to be in the moment. So I'm very lucky to travel with them, because you put everything aside and just see the world through the eyes of the horse.
I also feel like the pace of travel is an appropriate way to see and understand a place.
You never go fast enough to lose anything, but you never go slow enough for things to get, the same or get old. I think that horse pace is great. And, if you see, because you go wonderfully consistently the whole time. When I travel with a horse, I probably ride maybe 20% of the time, 25% of the time. And then the rest is walking next to him or her. But also the other fun part is that if you got like an open field, you jump on, and it's fun for both of you to go and have a quick canter or gallop. But then you go up a mountain, you jump off, or you go into a village or a bar or something, and you're next to each other.
I've never been a horsey person, lack of experience, nothing against them. But it strikes me, it's a bit like when you go walking with your dog and everyone wants to come up and talk to you. Animals are that great leveler, and you don't have to talk to the person first. You can, pat the animal, and then that leads into a natural conversation.
Yeah, exactly. It just breaks down that barrier that I think we have intrinsically as two people meeting from different walks of life, or it brings people together, magnetizes it, and it makes us kind of equal in that moment. And it's a lovely leveler.
These experiences have had such an impact on Louis that he now has a charity devoted to helping more people have these kind of mindful journeys. So I asked him to tell me more about it.
So after I made a ride down the UK in 2020, the way that the horse connected to people and the kind of sense of community that journey created made me want to start a charity that would share this with as many people as possible. So that charity is called The Big Hoof, and we create long distance journeys with horses around the UK and actually in Europe as well. Yeah, to bring people together to become connected or reconnected with the land around us, and to raise money for local causes as we go. And it's with the horse kind of leading the way, and that wonderful sense of being in the moment, trying to be in the moment, kind of captured by being with a horse. We get people from all walks of life joining, and you get to kind of rediscover your own country, your own back door as well, with this animal that used to be, everyone used to have before 1910. Everyone would have a horse, so it's kind of going back in time a bit.
I love that. So Louis' charity is called The Big Hoof, or obviously if you have a lovely English accent like Louis, The Big Hoof. And you can find out more at The Big Hoof or thebighoof.com. I should note that as I was preparing these notes to record, my kitten, my 5-month-old baby girl, tried to walk across the keyboard. Well, she did walk across the keyboard and tried to erase the line about the horses and the big hoof. So clearly her thoughts are she doesn't like horses as much as the rest of the world. I guess when you're a little kitten, you are trying to get away from the horses. Anyway, I recommend Louis' work. So that is all for this episode about mindful travel. Thank you so much for listening, and a big shout out to my guests. So first of all, I chatted with Chelsea Gruber. You can find out more about Chelsea's travels at chelseasolotravels.com, and she's on Instagram at Chelsea Solo Travels as well. I then chatted with Christine Newell. You can find out more about her writing at christinenewell.com, and her fabulous book 5 Seasons in Seoul about her experiences in South Korea is out now, and I've linked to that in the show notes. You can find out more about Louis at louisdhall.com. And he also has a great book out called In Green, 2 Horses, 2 Strangers, and a Journey to the End of the Land. And I have left a link in the show notes to that, as well as to The Big Hoof. Do not forget, come and tell me all about your mindful travel experiences or any others in our Facebook group or our LinkedIn group for Thoughtful Travellers. Links are in the show notes. And Do also come and see what we're writing and talking about on Substack at thoughtfultravel.substack.com. All of these links and more are in the show notes, which today are at notaballerina.com/352. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.